Hello, Carrie. Welcome to the Women Awaken podcast.
Hello, I'm delighted to be here.
I'm delighted to have you, and I'm very excited about this conversation we're about to have.
Yes, indeed.
Carrie, you are a author, and you're also a spiritual explorer. So you have really had
Yeah.
a fascinating experience of connecting with the cosmos, and you've got some information for us about what's out there, and there's a lot.
Yes. Well, what's out there is something actually we're connecting with all the time. We have the ability at any time to go deep into our inner peace and then lift up into a zone that I call Ataquay. It's a word that came to me. It's Ataquay is that zone of intuition and serendipity and coincidence. It's also where you go if you go out in the forest alone or gaze out over the ocean and see the sunset, and you're just lifted into that place. And it just turns out that in that, when you allow yourself to go into that zone, you have access to what is likely to happen. You have access to your own path that is lying out there before you. And you have, very importantly, access to all the help and love you could ever need. And it's all right there.
I just pictured like a giant candy store of cosmic goodies that are going to make you real happy and feel good, something delicious.
Right. Well, we are loved. We are. We are deeply loved children of the universe. And it's so strange that we spend so much time. And I know you focus on women, and I do too. They're the ones who come to me. And that it's so crazy that especially women, all people, but especially women, spend so much time and energy thinking that they're less. It's absolutely crazy when in fact we are enormously powerful, enormously powerful, and we're deeply loved. This idea that any of us are not enough is wrong. We're loved and we have power, power to access the help that's within us, power to understand the right path and the next step that we should take in life. It's all there.
Yes. Carrie, why do you think it is that we believe these things about ourselves, that we're not enough, that we're not powerful?
Yeah, I think it's because we're raised in our society to look outside for answers and validation, right? We're raised, our society tells us that over and over again. Look outside, look outside. You're important if you have money. You're important if you know, if you're beautiful. You're important if you're young. All these things. Look outside, and it's not true. The answer, it's really simple. The answer is looking inside and learning to come deeply inside and find that inside you in this moment. So that's the other thing. We're taught in our society to focus on the past and on the future, and we forget completely about this moment. And that's where the inner peace resides. It's all in this moment. The past is all full of regret and blame and guilt and all of those things that society, not by society, I mean also our families, we're trained, right? We're trained as little kids to do this for reward, avoid that to avoid punishment. We're just like any other animal, a domesticated animal. We've been trained, and so much of that then has us blaming ourselves for and double a second guessing ourselves for those wonderful choices that we're capable of making, because we look outside and say, maybe I'm not supposed to do that, maybe she won't like that, maybe he won't like that. And it's just simply training. And you and I also had a conversation about this. It's training in our society to keep those in power in power.
Yes. Yes. And,
Right.
Carrie, when you were describing your experiences with Ataquay,
Yes.
and the feeling that you get, and when you were saying how powerful women are, it reminds me that women have a very important energy and aspect that we are meant to bring to our planet, to our society, to our species. Yet we have been essentially denied the importance of who and what we are. At this point in time, I personally believe there was a point a long time ago where women knew what they were and brought these abilities and gifts to the world, but that they were, just as you just spoke to, slowly but surely extinguished because somebody realized how powerful women were and they wanted to shift that power away and to others.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I wasn't even that slow or subtle. If you think about the witch trials, if you think about gypsies who focused on just the ability on intuitive abilities, right? And the so-called witches, I think, were women who understood healing. And women have been quite systematically reduced in stature in our society, and not just our society, across the globe. And yes, there have been a few. My understanding is that the societies that honored women more than we do. My understanding, for instance, is that the Northern American, Native American societies were much more honoring of women, and women had leadership positions. And we're struggling against a lot of rules and a lot of things that we were raised to believe in order to just find ourselves. And you know what's so funny is that these talents and skills, the skills to access our intuition, to come into the present moment, these are things that women have natural gifts for, very strong natural gifts. Like, even our phrase, women's intuition, tells us that women have always been recognized as people who had access to that power. And yet our culture has trained all children, men and women, to not believe in their natural intuitive gifts, not believe in their power. And that's what we're trained to do, trained to follow rules that are not in our best interests, but in the interests of those that would like our money and that want the power. It's pretty amazing. But we have such gifts, such amazing gifts. Another thing is too, our culture is very, now here I'm talking about the Western culture, very aggressive, right? It's very masculine aggressive. It's
Absolutely.
all built on testosterone. And that's what our culture admires. And sometimes women get into positions of power and they have to play a game where they have to act like men in order to do that, which is not, I'm hoping that those women are also accessing some of their inner truth as well. I don't know. But our society is like that. It's so aggressive and masculine and outward facing. And what will save us as a species, and what will save us as a culture, is to be quite the opposite. It's to be inner focused, using your intuition, glowing with the core light that you have inside, your own individual truth, and then coming out into the world as a softer, gentler person. And this is what the world needs. And we women, hey, that's who we are.
Yeah. Like, who's here for the job? We are. We can do it.
Yay!
But the problem is nobody's asking because they know what that would mean. That would mean that people take their power back and they're
Yes,
not as dependent on things outside of themselves. When they start
that's
to
right.
find the power of intuition, of unconditional love, of these things that make us very rooted and grounded and self-sufficient in ourselves.
Just imagine the transformation in our society if we switched off of admiring aggressive behavior.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, if we could honor the light that glows within each person, the skills they have, the talents they have, the truth, the inner truth that each person has inside their own heart. Because what I've found is when you do that, and of course, one of the main ways you do that is through the practice of meditation is a path in, right? But when you do that, when you begin to go deeply inside and access your own truth, and then have the courage to act on your own truth and go out into the world with that truth, it always steers you right. It always does.
Yeah.
Whereas when you go out with an aggressive stance, like, I want this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make this happen, you often just cause more trouble for yourself and everybody else.
Yep. Yeah. And, when you speak of sort of these attributes that women can bring, I think of the idea that, the feminine energy is that which honors life. And to me,
Yeah,
the masculine, when it's at its divine state, is that which serves life. And how beautiful those two work together. Yet when that which is meant to serve life more becomes like a slave driver of life, where it's like you said, that aggressiveness of more, more, more,
yeah,
because the masculine is doing, it is the outgrowth of life, which can be beautiful, but not when you say either it's you keep producing and make results and are innovative and powerful, or you're nothing. Then it thinks that that's its livelihood. To me, the feminine knows that life in and of itself is complete. There's nothing you have to
yeah,
do.
that's right. And this moment, this very moment, is in and of itself complete
Yeah.
and beautiful and wonderful and everything you could ever want.
It's fine. It's doing great.
So the thing that's so interesting too about our society is we're taught that happiness is something you get when you have certain things. You'll be happy when. You'll be happy when you have a husband, when you have a house, when you have money, when you have a car, when you have. You can then, and so it's all this some point out in the future is your happiness, when exactly the opposite is true. What's true is that happiness is now or not at all. That's it. I have a choice right now to choose happiness, because here I am. Why not be happy? I have a roof over my head. I'm talking to you. It's lovely. And I can choose to be happy right now. I don't have to wait until I have more. I
Yeah.
don't have to wait until I change and I am more either. Just as I am, just as my life is, just as everything is, I can choose to be happy. And to even just looking at that helps free you up from some of this drive of our society for more, more, more.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And
Even if, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Well, even if you look at the corporate structure, I was in the corporate world for over 40 years in the computers. I was a computer programmer and then an executive. And the drive, the whole structure of the capitalist corporate world is not just, oh, we're going to continue to do well. It's that you have to do more. You have to drive to increase. It's always an increase. You have to do 25% more than you did last year. And it's crazy making. It's a reflection of our whole society is that way, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because again, back to the feminine, it's not honoring what is. Just as you said, everything as it is perfect. But that mentality is that the way it is, not good. We're going to sink if we don't keep going like a shark. Just, you got to keep moving up, always more and more and more. Not sustainable, but also not based in truth.
Right. Not true at all.
Yeah.
And you know, if you've been on that treadmill, well, of course we all have, because we're in this society. We know it's not true. We know it doesn't make us happy, but we aren't sure what will make us happy. And then it turns out it's just right inside us. What makes us happy is to go quiet, to go peaceful, to go inside and notice that you have a heart full of love that wants expression, and you have eyes for beauty that want to soak in the beauty that's all around us. You have ears that want to listen to beautiful music. I mean, it's all here. It's everything we need is here. And if you practice, I know that some people have difficulty with meditation. I understand completely, because our minds are very busy. They're very, very busy. But I'd like to show you, if we could take 2 minutes, something I picked up along the line of my 25 years of a spiritual exploration. And that is a very simple, you can do it in 2 minutes. In fact, we're going to, way to quiet your mind. And it's kind of a Zen thing, but it's very fun. So what you're going to do is you're going to raise up, just bend your arm at the elbow so that your hand is not touching anything. That's the main thing. And your hand not touching anything. Then you close your eyes and you say to yourself, how can I know that my hand exists? And notice that your mind has no way to answer that except by sending energy to your hand. So for one beautiful moment, your mind is a little bit confounded and doesn't talk. It's quiet for 1 second. And you can keep asking that if you like. How can I know that my hand exists? And if your mind starts chattering again, you silently can just ask yourself again, how can I know that my hand exists? If you want, you can raise the other hand as well. How can I know that my hand exists? So did you find a moment of silence? And then we can just come back from that.
Beautiful.
Did you like that?
I love that.
Isn't that nice? It's so simple. It's like our minds are crazy making sometimes. And one of the main things that I always tell people is, don't think that what your mind says is true. It isn't, because that's where that conversation comes from. That thing that says I'm not enough. Oh, I made a mistake. Oh no, I shouldn't have done that. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. All that is conditioning. It's just conditioning from you were taught that from the minute that your parents wanted to control you, and then your teachers wanted to control you, and then your peers wanted to, and then the people you worked with and worked for wanted to control you. And they all taught you to think less of yourself so that you would pay attention to them. And on television, oh my goodness, they tell you constantly that you're not enough. You're not beautiful enough. You're not young enough. You're not slender enough. You need to buy what they're selling you in order to be enough. And your mind has that conditioning all the time. Now, if you do that simple little thing, and for 1 second, you had silence, your mind didn't know what to say. And if you can extend that moment, that's your goal in meditation, just extend that moment. And if the easiest way for you to meditate is to sit there with your eyes closed with one hand up, then so do it. And you want to extend the silence, because what happens when you're in that silence, did you feel how your whole body is just so happy that you gave it a moment? Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. That's beautiful, Carrie. Thank you so much for sharing that, because it is so simple, yet something that simple can be very powerful.
that's right.
Because what I feel is what you're offering is that we also are at a time as a species that we believe that everything should be figured out through the mind. And I believe there are things that
Yes,
cannot be figured out through the mind, but can only be felt. Because to your point earlier, inside is where the true treasures and the truth itself exist.
that's
Right.
right.
So our brain, like you said, asking, hey, what's up with my hand? It's going to say, I don't know how to
I don't
describe that to you.
know.
I can't tell you why it exists, but you can feel it. When you had me do that
Yeah,
exercise, I could feel that, like these, the energy in my
yeah.
hand.
Isn't
That,
that fascinating?
yeah, it's beautiful. So thank you. Thank you so much for sharing
And
that.
that transfer of energy, because I can feel it like just leave and go flow into my hand. And then
Yes.
your mind for one blessed second doesn't know what to say. Oh, thank goodness.
It's got nothing. Wouldn't that be beautiful if women got the opportunity to share something like that, and that we would just be heard and someone would actually acknowledge, okay, there is some, and not that it's just women who see these things. More and more people are coming aware that we have become a very external society, completely fixated on the external. And
Yeah.
just to, as you were speaking to earlier, when we get caught up in how I'm supposed to look and what can I do to be more, it's because it feels tangible with your hands, with your physical self. It feels like, well, I can go out and I can work out or eat the right foods or not eat food and do things tangibly. But when we just trust that it's all within, that feels more nebulous. And we think, well, what's that about? That's not going to actually give me results. We want the external. We want the tangible things to be impressive.
So what you have, what you're saying is absolutely true. And what we have when we learn to access Ataquay, the first step is quieting your mind so that you can hear I would like to call it the whispers of the angels. So the thing that's difficult is we've been trained to be afraid, right? We're afraid of punishment. We're afraid of losing. We're afraid and afraid of not being enough. We've been trained to that. And our voice of fear is very loud. Sometimes the voice of fear is just deafening, and we can't find a way out of that because of the noise of fear. But when you learn to quiet your mind, and what that was the beginning of it. Now you can recognize what a quiet mind is like. Now I can spend a little bit of time, and you can even figure out what you want to visualize. If you want to see that moment of quiet as a little space that you can widen like that. Now I know Deepak Chopra always calls that space the gap between your thoughts. And what he teaches is that meditation, you're trying to move into the gap between your thoughts. And that's exactly what that exercise did. It gave you a gap. And once you do that, that's the start, is quieting your voice of fear and conditioning enough so that you can access your truth. Now, once you've got a little bit of a window and you're learning to get that, then you lift up and you can ask a question. You can ask ask an open-ended question is always best, not yes, no, because yes, no implies you know the answer, right? Should I do this or this? When the best thing to do is probably something else that you haven't thought of. And so you can ask a question, an open-ended question, like, how shall I approach this meeting? is a great thing. How shall I approach? So let's suppose I have an interview coming up that's very important to me. And I've been practicing quieting my mind. And I've been practicing going into a clear space and quieting fear and trusting my own self. And I have a pencil and paper nearby is what works well for me. And I say, how shall I approach this interview? Then when you practice this, after a while, you begin to see something flows right into your mind. It pops in right away, but you have to capture it just as it is, because sometimes it doesn't make sense at first. But you write it down, you capture it. And you know how I began all my adventures was a practice of going every morning and asking for a word for the day. And I would write down the word. As first you have to relax, quiet your mind, and breathe. Of course, you have to breathe. I forgot about the breathing, is very important. Breathe into relaxation, quiet your mind, to use your hand if you like. Get to that place and then ask, what is my word for the day? And you write down the very first word that pops in your mind. And this starts to build up your trust that there's something there for you, because what you'll find is at some point throughout the day, that word will come in handy. It'll either, it might be, maybe it's like, speak up, something like that. You say, why? What a strange thing. And then you find yourself in some meeting at work and you have an idea, but you're afraid to do it. And you remember that morning, what you received was speak up. And so you do, and good things happen. So it's a place to start with quiet the mind, breathe, ask for a word for the day. And then from there, you begin to clue in. And then you find yourself before an interview being able to say, how shall I approach this? How shall I approach this? So I asked before our conversation, how shall I approach my interview with Whitney? Mm-hmm. And what I got was, just relax and be yourself.
Perfect. Beautiful.
Yeah, that's what I got. And it's different. Obviously, it'll be different in different circumstances. Someone else, it might be professional, or it might be, you never know what people want, what people want from you.
That's so lovely. Thank you, Carrie. And, when I think about people being able to get into that state, to be able to connect, whether it's, there's concepts of your wise mind or connecting with your spiritual guides, when we're able to find that, I think it's important and impactful because it makes us recognize that we are not alone. I think that's also a big problem on our planet, is we feel so alone because we've been told that if you feel connected to everything, if you're feeling things bigger and beyond you, it's not true. And we're all every man for themselves, and everything is physical. And that's very lonely because, again, it's not based in truth. And it strips us of connecting with the greatest source of all, which is life itself.
Yes. Oh, I couldn't agree more. There is so much there for us. It's just really amazing. Now, I talked to you about my book. One of the things I talk about in my book is I had one day when I was going down to the garden asking for my word for the day, asking for messages and things. And what happened was I sat down on my garden bench and I saw a vision. And in my mind's eye. And the vision was of the universe in layers. So up at the very top was a layer I would call the great all, the oneness, the place where there is no differentiation, where we're all one. And then, or source, some would say God. And then the layer under that was also a bright gold, like that top layer was a bright gold. The layer underneath that top layer did have differentiation, like glowing lights that were what we would call our soul or our eternal self, as slightly differentiated from the great oneness. Then was the area, which I'm going to come back to in a second, which is where I've been talking about us lifting into. And down at the bottom was our physical life here on earth, and it was in shadow. We're creatures wandering through the shadow, but each of us in that shadow had a golden cord leading up to that soul self, to that eternal self, that higher self. And the people, there was, in what I saw, there was a woman who was meditating, and she had a very open, wide channel. She was receiving all kinds of loving, beautiful energy flowing in and lighting her up because she was connected to her own higher self. And then there were people that were in this fog of fear and being lost, who had their cords were twisted and they just weren't receiving enough of the energy down. So that middle section is what I saw, and what I continue to see is there are, when we talk about spirit guides or angels or power animals, it's all the same thing to my mind.
Mm-hmm.
There is energy. There are beings of energy who are focusing on helping us get an open cord, so that we can receive the love and the light that we are. Because up here at this level, we all are. Even the most tortured, horrible person on earth has an eternal soul self that is glowing with love and light. And there are these, I say, like spirit guides, spiritual entities, angels, that are helping people open that cord. And I know in my 25 plus year journey of exploration, that's exactly what I see. And that is, of course, what I'm trying to do too, is help people access their own selves. It's like that. But yeah, it's not something that you have to practice.
Thank you for that visual. And I saw it so clearly. And the vision I had was almost that we're like scuba divers at the very bottom of the ocean in this darkness. And we think that's all there is. But imagine if you were at the bottom of the sea and all of a sudden it lit up, you would see so much, and that it's this whole own world. And when you say that you're helping people sort of open their cord, to me, it allows the light to come through.
Yes.
So what if we could light up our life here on earth,
exactly,
in the darkness?
Yes.
It would be illuminated, and wow, we'd have a whole different experience. We'd be working with we'd be so stoked to be here.
That's right. And the thing is, what we've done, as you just said, we seem to think that the mind is going to find all the answers, whereas that's what got us into trouble. That thinking, driving, aggressive mind, and when in fact it's the heart and the soul and the light and the love that have to be the answer.
Yes,
just have to be, because these other problems that we have created, they're getting harder and harder to solve with the mind, aren't they?
They really are, but we keep trying.
We do.
We're not giving up, but that can shift, that can change.
Yeah, go ahead.
I believe that things change when people start doing things differently. When people start doing things differently and people see that and they say, wow, that looks different. That looks interesting. That looks nice. I want to try it that way. Because my belief is that you can't force anyone to change. When we try to fight against the way that things are, we're still giving it all of our power and energy. But if you take our energy away from that which is will eventually on its own begin to dissipate, because we're putting our energy elsewhere into something that's more about bringing the light, about illuminating life in an accurate way, allowing the truth to shine so that we can see the truth and feel more free, because we're not living in these misconceptions.
Yes, and you know, one of the things that's a great shame about our society is how we have denigrated the arts, because the arts are all about bringing your personal truth out, and yet those are the people we don't want to pay money for. You know, that's what, so most people, their artistic ventures have to be done. They have to go to work and do a so-called normal job and then do their other artistic things on the side, because our society has decided that
There's no
music
value.
that it has no value. That's right. Our society says education has no value, art has no value. It's very strange.
I wonder why they say that. Maybe because that allows us to tap into our creative abilities, and that's too dangerous to see what we have inherently. You can go out in the middle of a field with nothing but a pad of paper and a pen, and you can tap into your creativity, and that's all you need, right? But then where are we going to get our supply, our power, our
Yeah.
profits?
And if you can learn to access your inner truth and understand yourself as someone who is walking a meaningful path, you just might not decide to do everything that somebody else tells you to do.
Wouldn't that be something?
Wouldn't that be something? You might even speak up in the home.
Yeah.
And ask for your own amount of space and quiet, and to go on your journeys, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Carrie, the things that you focus on and that you offer, I think are of such importance, because the things that came up for me while you were speaking that I pointed out were people feeling alone and people not wanting to be here, feeling that life is almost a punishment. Again,
Yeah.
both such strong falsehoods, but we need people to shine a light for them to see, oh, wow, this is actually a cool place to be. We can really, we have so much capability. We're basically magicians. We create life, right?
Yes, we
Life
sure
doesn't
do.
just get dropped on us. We've created life the way it is now. And that's the secret that they don't want us, that isn't really encouraged, is that we can recreate life at any time, our whole experience.
I am so glad you said that, because it's an absolute segue to what I'm going to be doing in 2023.
All right, let's hear it.
Well, as a little background for this, 3 years ago, my husband died, and we'd been married for 46 years.
Oh my goodness.
And I was so fortunate that I had been on my spiritual journey for so long, and I had all these tools that I could dip into and use. And so one of the things, as I've mentioned, is a book that I've written that outlines these tools to help people. But what I've decided to do in 2023 is I am right now developing a program, which I expect to offer in May or June, where I will, what it's all about, the working title is Choose Life: How to Create a New Life When the Old One Ends. And it could be, because in my case, it ended because my husband died. And that is just its own thing to deal with. But, you know, we all have also life. We have to create a new life through divorce. We have to create a new life when we retire, when we're forcibly retired, because the work that we've been doing goes away. I mean, there's so many times we have to do that. And we go through a transition time, a somewhat painful transition time often, but there's so many ways we can, first off, make that transition more bearable by learning to quiet the mind, learning to go inside. And then once we develop some of those talents to tap into the truth, we can discover that there's a beautiful path lying ahead of us, that for us, full of adventure and love and truth, and we can discover that. So I'm developing this program. I'm going to have a membership where I'll be taking people through live channeled meditations where we get in touch with spirit, and teaching people how to develop a morning routine that helps them learn these things and learn how to access their own truth. And then I'll also have some courses I'm developing. And right now, what I have is my book. And what you can do, your listeners, if you would go to carriehart.com. So it's CarrieHart, carriehart.com. You'll see right there on the home page that you can sign up on a list so that you learn when all these things are coming down. And you can also see my book. You can click on my book, go to Amazon, read more about it. And a lot of, as a matter of fact, the things that we've been talking about, like holding your hand up, that's in my book. I have at the back in the first part of it is basic concepts like the layers I talked about. And then the last part of the book is a toolkit of things like that that are just really helpful, useful things that we can do. And then I'll be, as I say, later in 2023, teaching that in person and working with people to find ways to do that on their own. It'll be fun.
Fantastic. Spreading the light. I love it.
That's
Helping
right.
people tap into their own inherent light.
Oh, yes. And it's there. It's
oh,
there. There's no question about it.
And when we all begin to tap into it, we're going to light this world up, and then it won't be so dark. We're not going to be scuba diving around in this mucky place. We're going to be like,
down in the muck, right?
we've been in the Garden of Eden this whole time. It's been paradise, and we didn't know it.
Isn't that the truth?
Because our insides are going to change. Not just outside, everything's going to look better too, but the world is already a gorgeous place, right? There's so much to discover and see that's exquisite. However, when you feel dark and alone and lost inside, it taints your experience. So you got to have that light to understand just
That's
the
right. That's right.
Yeah.
And some people have such a strong voice of fear that's all they can listen to, and they don't understand they don't have to have that voice.
Yes, that is such a strong point, that we don't have to exist this way. We don't have to live like this.
No, we really don't. It is possible, no matter what your circumstances, it is possible to find a world of peace inside. And even in the darkest times, I have found that if you can just quiet your mind for a moment and go deep inside and turn your attention to your core, your center, that you'll find there's a light glowing in there. And some people see it as a light, some people feel it as warmth, but it's there. It's right there in your torso. It's right there. And you can come to that place, and then you can let it start to expand and expand and expand. And one of the things that you want to become a light. You want to become a light that shines, and you have it right there inside you. It's right there, and you can let it go, expanding and expanding and expanding. And the thing to remember too is that we are just energy. We're just pure energy. And I read something once that was very useful that way, thinking about that we're just a bunch of spinning atoms. And they're saying that to picture how much just empty space we are is that if you looked at the nucleus of an atom as the pitcher's mound in a baseball stadium, and the electrons that circle around it are the farthest out seats in that stadium, and all the rest is just space. And believe it or not, that's what we are. We're primarily space. Isn't that weird?
Yes, but no, of course, we're energetic. Yeah. We're energy.
We are energy.
Yeah. Yes.
And so as an energetic being, we have the power to glow, and to glow enough to glow and past our fear and glow past that voice. I promise you, if you just practice reaching peace, it gets easier and easier and easier through just deep breathing, and then that little trick with the hand and just going into peace. It gets easier and easier. And then once you begin to realize it's yours to have at any time.
Time. It's totally accessible anytime. You don't have to go to the pharmacy to get it. You don't have to go to the grocery store. You don't have to go anywhere. It's there all along. And I love
Yeah.
to offer the listeners that, because I imagine that some people hear this and they think, well, I'd love to feel that way. But the truth is, everyone has, whether it's, after a really good workout or something, a long hike, and that feeling when you're driving home and you feel this peace where you're like, that was so beautiful. And then you watch the sunset as you're driving home and you think, this is so nice. I feel calm.
Yes.
That is that feeling. I want people to know that when you're sitting at the end of the day with your child or with your dog or your partner, and you just feel like, this is exactly where I want to be. And I'm so grateful for these things. And you have that sense of
Yes.
that
Thank you. Yeah.
you're experiencing one little drop of an infinite amount
Yes.
of an
And
experience.
nature is a really good way
Nature.
to, yeah, a lovely walk outside, all on your own. Go for a walk outside. And, if you even get a nice pace going, a rhythmic walking pace, it's a form of meditation.
Oh yeah.
Meditation doesn't have to be something that's hard and not fun. Just go out, just walk by yourself and breathe in the beautiful beauty of nature. It's phenomenal. And I had we can find these moments all the time. I had this job, which was a very high stress job, but from between the parking lot and my office, the walk, if I walked just over slightly, I could walk along a sidewalk with these beautiful trees hanging over. And
Mhm.
so what I would do is I would just make that my intentional calming down, peaceful moment in my day was that walk from my car to the office. And I'd walk very slowly. I'd look up at the sky, look up at the trees, and I'd give myself that moment before I jumped into the cauldron that was my job.
Yes. Yes. And thank you
And
so
it
much
makes
for
all the
offering.
difference.
It
Makes
does.
all the difference.
It does. And thank you for
You
offering
could
that,
think
because
of
I think that
go
some
ahead.
people believe that they can't have this life of peace and connection because they do have this very important and busy technical job that's, in these big offices and all tech related. But the truth is that it's accessible all the time. I mean, even just sitting there closing your eyes, but yeah, like connect with a tree, connect with like a patch of grass, anything that
That's
reminds
true.
you of
Yes.
life itself. It's
Actually,
accessible to all of us.
trees are wonderful givers of energy.
Oh yeah.
And and especially if you connect with a particular tree, that's what I found. And you just spend a little time under a particular tree and share the energy. If you think about a tree, they're giving off oxygen to you. They're beautiful. Sometimes they're giving fruit. They're always giving beauty. And you have these opportunities like this. I had another job, which was also high stress because I was in computers. So, that goes with the territory. It was always high stress.
Yeah.
There was a coffee room where you could go, and there was a window and a beautiful tree outside the window. So what I would do is I would go into that coffee room, and I'd put my cup there and wait for my coffee to come. And then I would intentionally focus outside to that tree and give myself a moment of peace and breathe and refreshment. And because I'm a tree fan, what can I say?
Who is
they,
that? They're pretty
they've been
fantastic.
They've been so helpful to me. Trees have. I think of them as my friends.
They
And you
are.
could think of them as your spiritual gurus.
They have a lot to share with us, a lot of wisdom, and they don't have to say a thing. Just go stand by one and just watch, just look at it. Just see
That's
how
right.
it lives its life. It
And
just
I like to and then if you go up and you actually touch the bark of the tree, sometimes you just get this beautiful surge of energy. It's very
energy. It's
interesting.
remarkable because they're full of it and they give it freely.
I know.
They're beautiful, beautiful things. Yeah, time with trees, be a tree hugger. Just go for it. Just get in there.
That's right.
And also talking about connecting and, getting into that space. When you're in nature with a tree, there is an energy, and it can allow you to kind of reach that place because you're almost getting like some assistance, right? The tree is coming in for the assist. It's giving you that extra opening, that extra ability to connect.
Yes. And the thing I love about what you're saying too about all of this is we don't have to make this hard. I don't agree for my own belief system. No, you don't have to sit a certain way and do this, and you don't have to. You can make this easy. We have it all within us, and you need to just find what your way is. For some people, a very strict routine works. For some people, it doesn't. And we're all individual. And some people going for a walk in the woods is the best way to get there. It's all legit. It really is. We just want to reach that peaceful place that then allows us to access all the wisdom and love that's there for us. Because it is. It is. So much help. That's what's so interesting, is I find once you open up this connection, and then it starts to expand and expand and expand. It's like opening a door and the wind takes it and blows it open. You just have to be willing to open it that crack and spend a little bit of time getting in that first place. And then what you find is that the wisdom that you'll receive, and maybe it's your own wisdom that's always there from that higher self, right? I kind of guess where I'm going these days is that there are all those helpers who are helping you access your own truth and your own wisdom. And it's really the ultimate thing you're talking to is yourself at the highest eternal self, who knows everything, who knows why you're here in this lifetime, what direction you're going, what will you find that's fulfilling. And what is really, really cool when you do this is you get practical advice. So things like, oh my God, I have a horrible meeting coming up. I don't know what to do. I'm in trouble here. And so you spend your time, you've trained yourself to be able to do this even under stress. That takes a little while. First, you do it at home, stress-free. But after a while, you get so even in stressful circumstances, you can access your own wisdom. And then you just say, how shall I approach this? How shall I approach this? And something comes to you. It could come to you in words. It could come to you in a knowing. It could come, some people, one woman that I worked with, we get pictures. She would get like little inner visions. And that was her answer. But an answer will come to you. Or it's a thought that you just recognize as truth, right? But it's really practical. It's really practical. And when you follow it, when you have the courage to follow it, because sometimes it does take courage, is it might be, yes, you have to speak up. Yes, you have to ask for the right thing for yourself. It can be things like that. So you get the courage and you follow it. Oh, it's better than anything you could have ever thought of yourself.
Yeah. Yep. Because it's that your higher self, your higher wisdom. It's you. And
I believe so.
I believe so. And I think it makes you realize I actually know quite a bit. I'm pretty amazing. And that is what I wish for people to come to see and know and feel, is that there is nothing that I can't connect with, that I can't come to remember, understand, and be able to be.
Yes. Yes, that's it.
That's it. There
right
it is.
there in a nutshell. That's it. That's the whole thing. Oh, I guess we're done.
Well, we are. We're actually here towards the end of our conversation. So high five. We wrapped it all up. One little nut. Well, Carrie, this has been such a beautiful, helpful, enlightening conversation. Thank you so much for the work that you do. Thank you for helping others to allow themselves to show their light, to connect with their light, and to illuminate our world.
Oh, it's my pleasure. That's what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life, looks like.
Me too. High five again. This worked, allowing one, because then once you tap into this and you see what is so, you realize, all right, this is what this time is for, is to be the bringers of the light.
That's right.
You know, to
That's
help
right.
others and
And
help
everybody has so much beauty and light inside. They do.
everyone, no matter what, all of us.
That's right.
It's amazing. All right, Carrie. Well, this has been such a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a
Take
real
good care.
pleasure.